The Hidden Fleet. The professor's invitation to assist with a classified research project accessing the university's restricted archives had been a dream come true for the alien students. Together they combed through ancient records and pieced together an impossible secret. A clandestine human space fleet far larger and more advanced than Earth had ever revealed. Whispers of unregistered dreadnoughts, hidden orbital shipyards, and entire armies waiting in the wings filled their minds with awe and dread. The acrid stench of smoke and charred flesh filled Korvac's nostrils as he huddled against the cold metal wall of the maintenance corridor. Beside him, Zara's antenna twitched nervously, her blue skin pale in the dim emergency lighting. Theos knelt in stoic silence, his dark Vulcan eyes fixed on the cavernous hangar that sprawled before them. There, nestled in a cradle of scaffolding and umbilical cables, rested a starship unlike any Korvac had ever seen. Its sleek, obsidian hull seemed to drink in the light, while strange pulsing conduits snaked across its surface like glowing veins. A forest of antennae and sensor arrays bristled from its prow, hinting at scanning and communication capabilities far beyond the standard. And there, half shrouded in shadow, was the unmistakable outline of a devastatingly powerful particle beam cannon. As the alien trio watched in stunned disbelief, a deep subsonic hum filled the air, rising to a tooth-rattling crescendo. The ship shuddered, then began to rise on columns of brilliant blue plasma, tearing free from its moorings with a shower of sparks and shredded metal. It hung in the air for a moment, a black silhouette against the glare, then shot forward, disappearing through a disguised opening in the mountainside that irised closed behind it. "By the pillars of the celestial temple," Zara breathed. "The humans have been holding out on us." "Impossible," Theos murmured. "Such advanced technology. The Vulcan Science Academy has seen no evidence, no indication." The three students whirled to see Professor Janine standing behind them, his face a mask of shock and dismay. In the harsh light, he looked older, his features lined with deep weariness. One by one, they gave their solemn oaths, the weight of the moment settling over them like a shroud. In the days that followed, as they returned to the bustle and normalcy of university life, Korvac found his thoughts constantly straying to that hidden hangar, to the impossible ship that lurked beneath the mountains. He could see the same flickering unease in Zara's eyes during their shared quantum mechanics lectures, could feel the tension in Theos's usually unflappable demeanor as they pored over stellar cartography charts in the library. Whispers began to circulate through the alien student body, furtive and low, tales of secret installations, of clandestine fleet movements at the edges of human space. In dimly lit dorm rooms and secluded corners of the Arboretum, the trio pored over every scrap of data they could glean from the university's vast archives, trying to fit the pieces together. But eyes were watching. Korvac began to notice the silent, stern-faced humans in unmarked uniforms lingering at the edges of the crowd. He tensed when a classmate, a gregarious denobulan, remarked casually that Commander Zephyr Hawkins had been asking about him. His ID badge failed twice at restricted access laboratories before suddenly reactivating itself. A message from Homeworld, text only, left him staring at the screen in numb disbelief. Rumors spreading. "Ambassador demands answers." "We're in deep," Zara whispered, her luminous Syrian eyes reflecting the scrolling data. Her tentacle-like appendages danced across the interface, deftly navigating the university's most secure servers. Suddenly, the screen exploded with information, schematics, coordinates, mission logs. Korvac's eyes widened as he took in the sheer scale of what they were seeing. These propulsion signatures, they're beyond anything in the Andorian database. How did they keep this hidden for so long? Theos, usually stoic, couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. The logical conclusion is deeply troubling. Earth has been systematically deceiving the galactic community for decades. As they delved deeper, a familiar name caught Korvac's eye. He expanded the file, and Professor Janine's face filled the screen alongside a dossier that made his blood run cold. "He's not just a professor," Korvac said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's the deputy director of something called Project Prometheus. His whole career, his research, it's all been about studying us, our technology, our weaknesses. We could prevent a war, Korvac interjected. Or start one, Zara countered, her blue skin pale in the holographic light. Theos steepled his fingers deep in thought. The logical course of action is not immediately apparent. We must consider all potential outcomes. Nixiana nodded grimly. Most likely, and if he's onto us, we don't have much time. Zara nodded, already keying in a complex series of codes on her communicator. I'll reach out to my mentor at the Endor Science Academy. He has connections in the Federation Council. As the room buzzed with tense activity, a muffled thud echoed from the hallway outside. Theos moved silently to the door, peering through the peephole. His normally impassive face tightened with concern. We have company, he whispered. 3 humans, non-standard uniforms armed. Nixiana's fingers flew across her interface, bringing up the building security feeds. On the screen, they watched as a team of black-clad operatives moved methodically through the dorm, led by a stern-faced man with a cybernetic eye. Agent Orion Klein, Zara hissed, recognizing the infamous operative from her intelligence briefings. The door to the dorm room burst open, slamming against the wall with a resounding crash. Korvac and his friends froze. Data crystals clutched in trembling hands as Agent Orion Klein strode in, flanked by 2 burly operatives. Before anyone could react, Commander Hawkins appeared behind them, his face a mask of stern disapproval. My office, now, Hawkins ordered, gesturing to a row of chairs. As they complied, Agent Klein prowled behind them, his presence a looming threat. You've put us in quite a predicament, Hawkins began, his voice low and controlled. Accessing classified systems, communicating with off-world entities about restricted technology. Do you have any idea of the consequences of your actions? The alien students nodded mutely, the weight of the threat settling over them. They're monitoring our communications, Nixiana said, her luminous eyes darting nervously. But I might have a solution. There's a Deltan student, Vina. She has unique abilities when it comes to private data transfers. Can we trust her? Zara's antennae twitched skeptically. I can help, Vina said softly, her eyes full of understanding. But be careful, the walls have ears. I've seen things too, Emerson confided one evening as they worked late in Zara's lab. The military's got their fingers in everything around here. Zara nodded eagerly, relieved to find an ally. She failed to notice Emerson discreetly attaching a tiny device to the underside of her workstation. Theos steepled his fingers, his dark eyes troubled. The logical course of action is not clear. Any move we make could escalate the situation further. As they debated their options, Korvac's gaze fell on a hollow image of Professor Jenin. A wild idea began to form. Jenin, Korvac said suddenly. He's been involved in this from the beginning. Maybe he can help us find a way to defuse the situation before it's too late. I don't know, Korvac admitted. But right now, he might be our only hope. With trembling fingers, Korvac composed a message to Jenin, requesting an urgent meeting. As he hit send, he had no way of knowing that at that very moment, Jenin was sitting in a secure briefing room with Commander Hawkins, reviewing the latest intelligence on the alien students' activities. They've taken the bait, Jenin said, a hint of regret in his voice. Now we wait and see how the galaxy responds to the revelation of Earth's true power. The shocking revelation. The cold metal of the interrogation chair bit into Korvac's skin as he sat, wrists and ankles bound, under the harsh glow of the overhead lights. Commander Hawkins stood across from him, his expression a mixture of disappointment and calculation. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, Hawkins said, his voice a low rumble. But you've left us no choice. Korvac's mind raced, trying to piece together a way out of this mess. They had uncovered too much, seen too much of Earth's secret military power. If the Galactic Council found out what they knew, it could trigger a war the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. The door hissed open and Professor Jenin entered, his face drawn and weary. You shouldn't have involved them, Jenin, Hawkins said without turning. They're students, not soldiers. They were bound to find out eventually, Jenin replied, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Better it happens now, in a controlled environment. Korvac's heart pounded in his chest as the 2 men conversed as if he weren't even there. They were discussing him, his friends, their lives, as if they were just pawns in some grand game. What are you planning to do with us? Korvac demanded, struggling against his restraints. What happens now? Hawkins finally turned his gaze on Korvac, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. That depends on you, he said slowly. You've stumbled onto something far bigger than you can imagine. If you cooperate, if you help us understand what you've learned, there might be a way out of this for you. Korvac felt a surge of anger and fear. And if we don't cooperate? Hawkins's expression hardened. Then you'll be treated as enemy combatants with all the consequences that entails. The door opened again, and Zara and Theos were brought in, similarly restrained. They exchanged worried glances as they were seated beside Korvac. "Professor?" Zara began, her voice trembling slightly. "Why are you doing this? We thought you were on our side." Janin sighed deeply, running a hand through his thinning hair. "It's not that simple, Zara. The truth is, Earth isn't ready to reveal its full capabilities to the galaxy. Not yet. There are forces at play that you can't begin to comprehend. We understand more than you think," Theos said quietly, his Vulcan composure barely holding under the strain. "Your secrecy, your military buildup, it's a threat to the entire galaxy. How can you justify this?" Hawkins stepped forward, his cybernetic eye gleaming ominously. "Justify? We don't have to justify anything to you. Earth has been preparing for threats from beyond our borders for centuries. We've seen what happens when civilizations become complacent. We won't let that happen to us. So you'd rather start a war?" Korvac shot back, his anger flaring. "Is that what all this is about? Controlling the galaxy through fear?" Hawkins's expression didn't change. Sometimes fear is the only thing that keeps the peace. Before Korvac could respond, the room's lights flickered, and an alarm blared through the facility. Hawkins touched his earpiece, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" he snapped. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir, we have an unauthorized transmission. It's coming from within the secure data network." Hawkins's face darkened. "Lock down the facility. No one gets in or out." He turned to Janine, his expression grim. "We have a breach. It's them." "Who?" Korvac demanded, his heart racing. "Who's coming?" But Hawkins didn't answer. He barked orders into his earpiece, and the room filled with tension as the situation spiraled out of control. The walls seemed to close in on Korvac as the reality of their situation hit home. They were caught in the middle of something far bigger than they had ever imagined. And now, with the facility on high alert and Earth's darkest secrets on the line, there was no turning back. "You've left us no choice," Hawkins said coldly. "If you won't cooperate, then we'll have to take what we need by force." Korvac's blood ran cold as Hawkins signaled to one of his operatives. "Begin the neural scan," Hawkins ordered. "Let's see what they know." Panic surged through Korvac as the operative approached with a device that hummed ominously. He struggled against his restraints, but it was no use. The cold metal pressed against his temple, and a sharp pain lanced through his mind as the device activated. The room around him faded into a blur of colors and sounds, his thoughts spiraling into darkness as the scan began. He could feel them probing his memories, extracting information, but there was nothing he could do to stop it. Images of the hidden fleet, the secret archives, and the impossible technology flashed before his eyes, each one a dagger of pain as they were ripped from his mind. And through it all, he could hear Hawkins' voice, calm and controlled, issuing commands as the operation continued. "We're almost done here," Hawkins said, his voice distant. "Prepare them for transport. We're moving them to Site Omega for further interrogation." Site Omega. The name sent a chill down Korvac's spine. He had heard rumors about that place, whispers of experiments and disappearances, but he had never believed them, until now. He fought to stay conscious, to resist the pull of the scan, but his strength was fading. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Zara's terrified face, her antennae twitching in fear as the world around him dissolved into nothingness. When Korvac awoke, he was in a different room, the restraints gone, but the sense of dread even stronger. Zara and Theos were beside him, their expressions mirroring his own fear. "Where are we?" Zara whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Korvac replied, his throat dry. "But we have to find a way out of here." The door to the room slid open and two figures entered. One was a human soldier, his uniform unmarked, his expression cold. The other was a tall, imposing figure with a cybernetic eye that gleamed with an unsettling light. "Welcome to Site Omega," the man with the cybernetic eye said, his voice as cold as his gaze. "I am Agent Orion Klein, and you are now guests of Earth's most secure facility. You will cooperate with our investigation, or you will face the consequences. The choice is yours." The escape plan. The sterile walls of Site Omega loomed over Korvac and his friends as they were escorted through the facility. The air was thick with tension, every corner watched by cold, unblinking cameras. Korvac's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan, but the constant presence of armed guards and the overwhelming sense of dread made it difficult to think clearly. "Stay close," he whispered to Zara and Theos, his voice barely audible over the hum of the facility. "We'll find a way out of this." "We have to," Zara nodded, her antennae twitching nervously as she glanced around the corridor. Theos, ever the stoic Vulcan, kept his expression neutral, but Korvac could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes flicked to every shadow, every potential threat. As they were led deeper into the facility, Korvac's thoughts turned to the neural scan. They had taken everything, extracted every piece of information they had uncovered. The secret fleet, the hidden technology, it was all in the hands of Earth's military now. And yet there was still a sliver of hope. Korvac had caught a glimpse of something during the scan, a brief flash of data that hadn't belonged to him. It was a location, a set of coordinates buried deep within the archives. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was important, important enough that the humans had hidden it even from their own people. If they could get to those coordinates, they might have a chance to turn the tables. But first, they had to escape. The opportunity came sooner than expected. As they were herded into a holding cell, a sudden explosion rocked the facility, throwing them all off balance. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered as the guards scrambled to contain the breach. "Now!" Korvac hissed, seizing the moment. They bolted for the door, using the chaos to their advantage. The guards, caught off guard by the explosion, were slow to react, giving Korvac and his friends a head start. They sprinted down the corridor, ducking into side passages and storage rooms to avoid detection. The facility was a labyrinth, but Korvac's sharp memory guided them through the twists and turns, each step bringing them closer to freedom. But freedom wasn't the only thing on Korvac's mind. As they ran, he pulled Zara aside. "I saw something during the scan," he whispered urgently. "A location. I think it's important." Zara's eyes widened in realization. "The hidden fleet? Maybe," Korvac replied, "or something even bigger. But we need to get to a terminal, access the mainframe, and find out." They reached an access panel, and Zara quickly got to work, her fingers flying over the interface. Theos kept watch, his Vulcan senses alert for any sign of pursuit. "Hurry," Theos urged, his voice low. "We don't have much time." "Almost there," Zara muttered, her antennae twitching with concentration. The screen flickered to life, and Korvac leaned in, his eyes scanning the data that scrolled across the screen. There it was, the coordinates, buried deep within a classified section of the archives. But there was more. A name caught his eye, one that sent a chill down his spine. Project Prometheus. "We need to go there," Korvac said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "Whatever Project Prometheus is, it's the key to all of this." "Got it," Zara confirmed, downloading the data onto a portable drive. "But we need to move. They'll be after us soon." They continued their escape, the facility's alarms blaring around them. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridors, and Korvac knew their time was running out. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of armed soldiers. Korvac's heart pounded in his chest as the soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, a familiar voice shouted from behind them. "Stand down!" Commander Hawkins stepped forward, his expression grim. "We're not here to kill you. Not yet, anyway." Korvac tensed, ready to fight, but Hawkins held up a hand. "Listen to me. You have no idea what you're getting into. Project Prometheus is not something you can just walk away from." "Then why are you letting us?" Korvac demanded, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Hawkins hesitated, a flicker of something, regret, crossing his face. "Because there are bigger things at play here. Things even I don't fully understand. But you need to know the truth, and you won't find it here." He stepped aside, and the soldiers lowered their weapons. "Go," Hawkins said quietly. "Before I change my mind." Korvac didn't need to be told twice. He motioned for Zara and Theos to follow, and they sprinted past the soldiers, their footsteps echoing through the deserted corridors. They reached the hangar bay just as the facility's lockdown protocols kicked in, sealing off most of the exits. But Korvac had spotted a service tunnel earlier, a narrow passage that led to a maintenance shaft on the surface. "This way," he called, leading them into the tunnel. The darkness closed in around them as they crawled through the tight space, their breaths loud in the confined air. After what felt like an eternity, they emerged into the cold night air, the facility a distant glow on the horizon. They had escaped, but the weight of their discovery hung heavy over them. Project Prometheus, the hidden fleet, the dark secrets buried in Earth's archives, it was all connected, and Korvac knew they had only scratched the surface. As they caught their breath, Korvac turned to his friends, determination burning in his eyes. "We're not done yet," he said. "We need to find out what Project Prometheus really is, and we're going to need help." The Galactic Conspiracy. The cold vacuum of space stretched out endlessly before them as Korvac and his friends hurtled through the stars, their stolen shuttle a tiny speck against the infinite blackness. The coordinates they had extracted from Site Omega led them to a remote sector of the galaxy, far from the well-traveled trade routes and communication networks. It was the perfect place to hide something, a fleet, a research station, or perhaps even something far more dangerous. Korvac stared at the console, the numbers on the screen confirming they were on course. "We should be approaching the coordinates soon," he said, his voice tense with anticipation. Zara sat beside him, her antennae twitching as she monitored the sensors. "I'm picking up some anomalies in the area," she reported, her tone wary. "It's like the space around here has been manipulated." "Manipulated how?" Theos asked from his position at the rear of the cockpit, his Vulcan eyes sharp and focused. "Gravitational distortions, energy signatures that don't match anything we've seen before," Zara explained. "It's like someone's been playing with the laws of physics." Korvac's grip tightened on the controls. "We're getting close. Keep an eye out for anything unusual." They approached the coordinates, and the space before them rippled like a stone dropped into a pond. The shuttle's sensors went haywire, unable to process the readings they were receiving. "What the—" Korvac began, but his words were cut off as the shuttle was suddenly yanked forward, pulled by an unseen force. The stars outside the cockpit blurred, and for a moment it felt as if they were being stretched across the universe. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sensation stopped. The shuttle dropped out of whatever strange field had, ensnared it, and they found themselves staring at a massive structure floating in the void. "By the pillars of the celestial temple," Zara breathed, her eyes wide with awe. "What is that?" The structure was enormous, dwarfing their shuttle by orders of magnitude. It was a colossal space station, its surface bristling with weapons, sensors, and docking ports. It was a fortress, a hidden base of operations for whatever dark purpose Project Prometheus served. "We need to get inside," Korvac said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. "There's only one way we're going to find out what's really going on here." They guided the shuttle toward one of the docking ports, using the station's own automated systems to gain access. The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud, and the airlock hissed open. "Stay alert," Theos warned as they disembarked. "Weapons at the ready." The interior of the station was as cold and sterile as the space outside. The walls were lined with conduits and machinery, the hum of the station's power systems filling the silence. "This place is enormous," Zara whispered, her voice echoing off the metal walls. "How did they build this without anyone knowing?" "That's what we're here to find out," Korvac replied, his eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of movement. They made their way deeper into the station, following the faint signs of activity. Power readings, heat signatures, and the occasional distant sound of machinery. It wasn't long before they reached a large chamber, its walls lined with consoles and holographic displays. In the center of the room stood a massive control panel, its surface covered in blinking lights and complex controls. "This looks like the central command hub," Korvac said, stepping forward. "If we're going to find out what Project Prometheus is, this is the place to do it." Zara immediately went to work, her fingers flying over the controls as she accessed the station's mainframe. The holographic displays flickered to life, filling the room with data streams and blueprints. "I've got something," Zara announced, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's a secure file locked with multiple layers of encryption, but I think I can crack it." "Do it," Korvac urged, keeping a wary eye on the door. Time was running out. They had no idea how long it would take for the station's occupants to realize they were here. Zara worked quickly, bypassing the security protocols with a combination of skill and luck. Finally, the file decrypted and the contents were revealed. The room fell silent as they stared at the information before them. This is impossible, Theos muttered, his Vulcan composure slipping for the first time. It can't be real. It's real, Korvac replied, his voice hollow. And it's worse than we ever imagined. The file detailed the true nature of Project Prometheus. It was a massive genetic engineering program designed to create a new breed of soldiers, hybrids of human and alien DNA, enhanced with cybernetic implants and advanced nanotechnology. The result was a force of super soldiers, loyal only to Earth, capable of unimaginable feats of strength, speed, and endurance. And that was just the beginning. The project didn't stop at creating soldiers. It extended to weapons, ships, and even entire fleets, all built with the same advanced technology hidden from the rest of the galaxy. But the most chilling part was the final phase of the project, a plan to unleash these forces upon the galaxy, seizing control of key systems and establishing Earth as the dominant power in the universe. "This is madness," Zara whispered, her antennae drooping in disbelief. "They're planning to conquer the galaxy." "We can't let this happen," Korvac said, his voice resolute. "We need to find a way to stop them." But even as they spoke, the station's alarms blared to life, and the doors to the chamber slammed shut, sealing them inside. "They know we're here," Theos said grimly, raising his weapon. "Prepare for battle." The chamber shook as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors. Korvac gripped his weapon tightly, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in the heart of Earth's most dangerous secret. But they had the truth, and with that they had a chance, a slim one, but a chance nonetheless. As the first soldiers burst into the room, Korvac and his friends stood their ground, ready to fight for the future of the galaxy. This was more than just survival. This was a battle for the very soul of the universe, the battle for the galaxy. The air crackled with tension as Korvac and his friends prepared for the battle ahead. The soldiers storming into the chamber were unlike any they had ever faced before. They moved with inhuman speed and precision, their eyes glowing with a cold, calculated intensity. These were the products of Project Prometheus, the hybrid soldiers, Earth's secret weapon. Korvac's heart pounded in his chest as the first shots were fired. The chamber erupted into chaos, the sounds of gunfire and energy blasts echoing off the metal walls. Korvac ducked behind a console, returning fire as the soldiers advanced. Zara was beside him, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to hack into the station's systems, searching for any advantage they could use. Theos, ever the calm and collected Vulcan, moved with deadly efficiency, his weapon never missing its mark. But despite their efforts, it was clear they were outmatched. The hybrid soldiers were faster, stronger, and more resilient than anything they had encountered before. "We can't hold them off for long," Zara shouted over the din of battle. "We need to find another way out." Korvac scanned the room, searching for an escape route, but the only exit was blocked by the advancing soldiers. They were running out of options and fast. But just as all hope seemed lost, the station shuddered violently, the lights flickering as a deep, ominous hum filled the air. "What's happening?" Theos demanded, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "It's the station," Zara replied, her voice tight with urgency. I think it's preparing to jump." "Jump? Jump where?" Korvac asked, his mind racing to keep up. "I don't know," Zara admitted. "But if we're still on board when it happens, we could end up anywhere in the galaxy. Or worse." The soldiers hesitated for a moment, clearly as uncertain as Korvac and his friends about what was happening. But that moment of hesitation was all they needed. "This way!" Korvac shouted, pointing to a maintenance hatch on the far wall. It was their only chance. They made a break for the hatch, fighting their way through the soldiers who attempted to block their path. The room continued to shake, the hum growing louder as the station's systems powered up for the jump. They reached the hatch and scrambled through it, sealing it behind them just as the station's engines roared to life. The world around them blurred, and for a moment it felt as if they were being torn apart by the sheer force of the jump. But then, just as suddenly, the sensation stopped. They had made it. They found themselves in a narrow maintenance corridor, the station eerily quiet after the chaos of the battle. "What just happened?" Zara asked, her voice trembling with adrenaline. We jumped, Theos replied, his voice calm but tense. But where? Korvac moved to a nearby console, bringing up the station's navigation logs. His eyes widened in shock as he read the coordinates. We're on the other side of the galaxy, he said, barely able to believe it. This station, it's capable of crossing the entire galaxy in a single jump. That explains why they were so determined to keep it a secret, Zara said, her voice filled with awe. With this kind of technology, they could strike anywhere, at any time, without warning. And we're right in the middle of it, Korvac added grimly. We need to find a way to stop this station before it can be used against the galaxy. But even as they spoke, the station's systems began to stir once more. The hum of the engines returned and the lights flickered ominously. It's preparing to jump again, Zara realized, her voice filled with dread. We don't have much time. They raced through the corridors, following the maintenance tunnels that crisscrossed the station. The whole structure seemed to pulse with energy, the walls vibrating with the power of the engines. Finally, they reached the heart of the station, the control room for the jump drive. It was a massive chamber filled with complex machinery and holographic displays. In the center of the room stood the jump drive itself, a towering device that crackled with energy. We need to disable it, Korvac said, his voice filled with determination. If we can shut down the jump drive, we can stop the station from being used as a weapon. Zara moved to the control panel, her fingers flying over the controls as she attempted to override the station's systems. But the jump drive was heavily protected, with layers of security protocols designed to prevent any tampering. It's no use, Zara said, frustration creeping into her voice. The system is locked down tight. I can't shut it down from here. Then we do it the hard way, Korvac replied, his eyes narrowing with resolve. He grabbed a nearby tool, a heavy piece of equipment used for maintenance, and moved toward the jump drive. Cover me! He shouted as he began to smash the control panels, sparks flying as the machinery buckled under the assault. The station shuddered violently as the jump drive was damaged, the lights flickering and the hum of the engines faltering. It's working, Theos shouted, his voice filled with hope. But before they could celebrate, the doors to the control room burst open, and a squad of hybrid soldiers stormed in. We're not done yet, Korvac shouted, raising his weapon. The battle that followed was fierce and desperate. Korvac and his friends fought with everything they had, determined to protect the galaxy from the horrors that this station represented. But they were outnumbered and outgunned, and the soldiers were relentless. Just when it seemed like all was lost, a massive explosion rocked the station, sending shock waves through the structure. The walls buckled and the lights flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. What was that? Zara asked, her voice filled with alarm. It came from the jump drive, Theos replied, his voice grim. We must have hit something vital. We need to get out of here, Korvac said, his voice urgent. This whole place is coming apart. They fought their way through the soldiers, the station crumbling around them as the jump drive's destruction triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. They reached the shuttle bay just as the station's structure began to collapse, debris raining down from above. Get to the shuttle! Korvac shouted, covering their retreat as Zara and Theos sprinted for the craft. They clambered aboard, the engines roaring to life as they took off, the station exploding behind them in a blinding flash of light. They hurtled through space, the shock wave from the explosion propelling them away from the dying station. Korvac glanced back at the wreckage, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had just destroyed. We did it, Zara said, her voice filled with relief. We stopped them. But Korvac couldn't shake the feeling that their victory was only temporary. The secrets of Project Prometheus had been destroyed, but the knowledge, the technology, still existed. And there would always be those who would seek to use it for their own gain. This isn't over, Korvac said quietly. We've won this battle, but the war for the future of the galaxy has just begun. The aftermath, the journey back to known space, was long and silent, the weight of what they had uncovered hanging heavily over them. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as they traveled through the void, the stars a distant blur outside the cockpit windows. Korvac sat at the controls, his mind racing with thoughts of what they had left behind. The destruction of the station had been a necessary act, but it had also raised more questions than it answered. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, and Earth's secrets had only just begun to be revealed. Zara sat beside him, her antennae twitching as she monitored the ship's systems. We're clear of the debris field, she reported. her voice subdued. No sign of pursuit. Good, Korvac replied, though his thoughts were elsewhere. How much of the data did we manage to recover? Zara hesitated, then brought up the holographic display. Not much, she admitted. Most of the files were destroyed in the explosion. But I did manage to salvage a few fragments. It's not much, but it might give us some insight into what they were planning. Korvac nodded, though his heart sank at the thought of all the knowledge they had lost. Project Prometheus had been a monstrous endeavor, but it had also been a glimpse into the future, a future where technology could reshape the galaxy in ways they could barely comprehend. We need to get this information to the Galactic Council, Theos said, breaking the silence. They need to know what Earth has been hiding. Agreed, Korvac replied, though he knew that convincing the Council would be no easy task. The evidence they had was limited, and Earth's influence within the Council was strong. There were powerful forces at play, and they would not take kindly to having their secrets exposed. We should also reach out to our allies, Zara added. The Andorians, the Vulcans, they need to know what we've discovered. We can't fight this alone. Korvac nodded, though a sense of foreboding settled in his chest. The galaxy was a fragile place, held together by tenuous alliances and a shared desire for peace. But the knowledge they carried could shatter that peace, igniting a conflict that could consume entire star systems. We'll contact them as soon as we reach Federation space, Korvac said, trying to keep his voice steady. But we need to be careful. If word gets out before we're ready, it could spark a war. Theos nodded in agreement, his Vulcan logic guiding his thoughts. We must proceed with caution. The fate of the galaxy may depend on it. They continued their journey in silence, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The stars outside the shuttle seemed to flicker with a cold, distant light, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the dangers that lurked within it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the edge of Federation space. The familiar sight of a Federation starbase loomed ahead, its lights a welcome beacon in the darkness. "We're here," Zara said, her voice filled with relief. "We made it." But even as they approached the starbase, Korvac's mind remained troubled. The knowledge they carried was dangerous, and there were those who would do anything to keep it hidden. As they docked with the starbase and disembarked, Korvac felt a sense of unease settle over him. The station was bustling with activity, Federation officers going about their duties with practiced efficiency. But Korvac couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They made their way to the command center, where a Federation officer greeted them with a nod. "Welcome back," the officer said, his expression neutral. "We've been expecting you." Korvac exchanged a wary glance with Zara and Theos. "Expecting us?" "We received a transmission from Commander Hawkins," the officer explained, his tone carefully measured. "He informed us that you would be returning with important information." Korvac's heart skipped a beat. "Hawkins? How had he known?" "He also mentioned that you had uncovered certain classified materials," the officer continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. "We'll need to debrief you immediately." "Of course," Korvac replied, though his mind was racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Hawkins had set them up, but why? What was his game? They were led to a secure briefing room, the walls lined with advanced security systems designed to prevent any unauthorized communication. The officer gestured for them to take a seat, then activated the room's holographic display. "We've reviewed the data you recovered," the officer began, his voice calm but authoritative. "It's clear that Project Prometheus represents a significant threat to galactic stability. However, the situation is more complex than you realize." Korvac frowned, unsure of where this was going. "What do you mean?" The holographic display flickered, and an image appeared. A star system, remote and uncharted. "This is the location of Earth's primary research facility," the officer explained. "It's where Project Prometheus was developed, and where the remaining assets are currently being stored. You want us to go there," Korvac said, realizing the implications. "Why?" "Because you're the only ones who have seen the full scope of the project," the officer replied. "And because we believe there may be more to this than even you realize. We need you to go there, gather intelligence, and, if necessary, neutralize the threat." Korvac exchanged a glance with Zara and Theos. This was a dangerous mission, one that could easily lead to their deaths. But the fate of the galaxy might very well depend on it. "We'll do it," Korvac said, his voice filled with determination. "But we're going to need support. Ships, weapons, and a team of specialists." You'll have everything you need, the officer assured them. But remember, this mission is off the books. If you're caught, the Federation will disavow any knowledge of your actions. Korvac nodded, accepting the terms. They had no choice. The secrets of Project Prometheus were too dangerous to be left in the wrong hands. As they prepared for the mission, Korvac couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated, that there were layers to this conspiracy that they had yet to uncover. But there was no turning back now. The future of the galaxy was at stake, and they were the only ones who could stop it from descending into chaos. "We're going to need all the help we can get," Zara said as they suited up for the mission. "We're up against forces that are far beyond anything we've faced before. We'll find a way," Korvac replied, though his voice was tinged with uncertainty. "We have to." They boarded their shuttle, the engines humming softly as they prepared to launch. The star system where Earth's secrets were hidden awaited them, a final challenge in a journey that had already taken them to the edge of the galaxy and beyond. As the shuttle lifted off, Korvac felt a sense of resolve settle over him. They were about to face the greatest challenge of their lives, but they were ready. They had to be. The fate of the galaxy depended on it. The final battle. The remote star system loomed ahead, its distant sun casting a cold, pale light over the planet below. This was the heart of Project Prometheus, the place where Earth's most dangerous secrets had been born. Korvac and his team approached in silence, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The shuttle's sensors detected the facility as they drew closer, a massive complex buried deep within the planet's surface, hidden from prying eyes. "We're here," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm picking up multiple energy signatures. The place is heavily guarded." "We expected that," Theos replied, his voice steady. "We'll have to go in quiet, take them by surprise." "Easier said than done," Korvac muttered, but he knew Theos was right. They couldn't afford a direct confrontation, not with the forces they were up against. They landed the shuttle in a secluded area, far from the facility's sensors. The landscape was barren and desolate, a stark contrast to the lush worlds they had left behind. "We'll have to go on foot from here," Korvac said, checking his gear. "Stay low and keep your eyes open." They moved quickly and silently across the rocky terrain, their senses on high alert. The facility loomed closer with every step, its towering walls a reminder of the power that Earth had kept hidden for so long. As they approached the outer perimeter, they spotted the first of the guards, hybrid soldiers, just like the ones they had faced on the station. Korvac signaled for them to stop, his mind racing as he formulated a plan. "We'll take out the guards quietly," he whispered. "If we can get inside without raising the alarm, we might have a chance to disable the facility's defenses before they know we're here." Zara and Theos nodded in agreement, and they moved into position. The guards were highly trained, but they were no match for Korvac and his team. They took them out quickly and efficiently, moving like shadows through the night. Once the perimeter was secure, they made their way to the entrance, a heavily reinforced door, sealed tight with layers of security. "This is it," Zara said, her voice tense with anticipation. "I'll see if I can get us inside." She went to work on the control panel, bypassing the security protocols with practiced ease. The door hissed open and they slipped inside, their weapons at the ready. The interior of the facility was a maze of corridors and chambers, all filled with the hum of machinery and the flicker of holographic displays. The air was thick with the scent of metal and ozone, a reminder of the advanced technology that powered this place. "We need to find the control center," Korvac said, his voice low but firm. "If we can disable the defenses and shut down the facility, we can prevent them from using Project Prometheus against the galaxy." They moved through the corridors with purpose, avoiding the patrols and security systems that dotted the complex. It wasn't long before they reached a large chamber, its walls lined with consoles and data terminals. In the center of the room stood a massive holographic display,